Hey guys, I'm Wheva, and I'm here at the cave in Fairfax, Virginia, and I'm going to be doing a review for the Whispers of the Old Gods expansion. This is going to be a multiple video series, and we're first going to start off with the changes to the classic set that they are doing. They are changing Ancient Lore to a 7-mana 5/5, draw 1 card, or restore 5 HP. I hate this change, because the fact is that they're nerfing combo, as you're going to see later. And if you think about the history of Druid and competitive Hearthstone over the last 2 years, every single competitive Druid deck in the history of Hearthstone has had combo. Cards like Innervate and Wild Growth, which allowed you to ramp up at the cost of card inefficiency. Ancient Lore then allowed you to refill your hand while also developing the board. So this card is already getting nerfed by the meta slowing down, and then topping that, they're nerfing it and making it harder for Ramp Druid to be a thing. It's going to push Druid in a different direction than I think the majority of the player base wanted it to go. To ramp up and just slam big minion after big minion after big minion after big minion. I would like to see them at least make it a 7-mana 6/6 or a 7-mana 6/7. I don't see a 5 health heal ever being worth playing a 7-mana 5/5. Next change is a change to Force of Nature, and this changes to nerf combo. Combo is Force of Nature plus Savage Roar. Force of Nature was an interesting card. It was a more targeted Starfall. This change is going to lead Druid to go in a more aggressive direction. This card is actually playable because what they're changing it into is a 5-mana 6/6, and these treants don't die at the end of your turn. On top of Savage Roar, makes for a more token kind of Druid deck, and with the only real good card draw mechanic being Azure Drake for Druids, which has spell power, we're going to see a more token aggressive Druid deck. For the next change, they are changing Keeper of the Grove to a 4-mana, choose 1, deal 2 damage, or silence a minion. And it's a 2/2 now. Even though it's going to see less play now, and it's not really an on-curve minion like it used to be, and there's a more cost to this effect, what we're going to still see is this effect being played as it is, probably as a one-of in pretty much every single Druid deck, because silence is so powerful. A 4-mana silence or deal 2 damage, it's still going to see quite a bit of play. But they're just making it so it's just less on-curve minion. We're going to see more variety and less silence effects in the game in general, so I think that is what they're going for, though. Now change to Ironbeak Owl. They're making it from 2 to 3 mana. So they're just making it 1 more mana. I like this change. Ironbeak Owl is just universally the best silence effect, because usually when you play a silence type effect, you really didn't care about the body, and you just cared about getting the silence effect out as cheaply as possible. And having a 2-mana silence effect available to all the classes was problematic. But they can't just remove silence from the game because it's such a important mechanic and it keeps certain things in check. Silence is important, and now we're going to see more of a choice between Owl and Spellbreaker. Also, another relevant thing to this change, you can now get it now from Jeweled Scarab. So I think Jeweled Scarab just got a significant buff by the fact that you can actually you can get a silence effect from it. It's a good change. It's going to lead to more variety and less silence in the game in general. Big Game Hunter. It is getting changed from a 3-mana 4/2 destroy a minion with attack of 7 or more to a 5-mana 4/2. Big Game Hunter was ridiculous. It was so much better than most other forms of removal like Siphon Soul, Polymorph, Assassinate, that those cards just straight up weren't seeing play because of Big Game Hunter being better than them. This card made it so any 7 attack minion that did not do, or above minion that did nothing on the turn that it was played, absolutely unplayable. Because you just played a 7 or 8 cost minion, and then your opponent removed it for 3 mana, developed a 4/2, and then probably used the rest of their mana, which is probably 7 or 8, or possibly 10, to develop another minion. And because Hearthstone is such a tempo-based game, this led games to just snowball completely out of control. This card becomes, it's still playable, but it is not just an auto-include in any deck that wants big minion removal. Now there's just a bigger price for big removal like this, and I think that's definitely good for the game. Hunter's Mark. Back in the old days, this card was very problematic with the Buzzard Unleash the Hounds combo, back when Buzzard was a 2-mana card. It's one of the most powerful 0-mana cards in the game. So increasing its mana by 1, I think, is just good, especially when they're nerfing Big Game Hunter. And the way Hunter decks are made, like they are more tempo based, they rely heavily on their hero power to getting consistent damage. Is your hero power is one of the best that scales into the late game. Is your opponent only has a certain amount of healing, and if you just keep hero powering, eventually you're gonna win. Hunter's Mark still gonna see play. It's still a good card, but if there's big minions in the game, we're just gonna see Hunter Mark being the only logical choice to a hunter. We're gonna see cards maybe like Deadly Shot. Maybe Hunter will start playing Black Knight, which is a card, by the way, guys, I think you're going to want to craft this expansion because I think it's insane. I think it's a solid change overall. Blade Flurry, it's being changed from 2 mana to 4, and instead of now dealing its damage to your opponent and opponent's minions, it's now only dealing damage to your opponent's minions. So it's just strictly a board clear at this point, and it's got its mana double. What this is going to allow to happen is more interesting weapon cards, like buffing up their hero power, interesting rogue weapons, instead of cards like Poison Blade being made, because Blade Flurry was such a crutch of the class. It was straight up the best board clear in the game while also being a burst mechanic. So it just made it so, as in the history of Rogue, it's gotten so many bad cards over expansions because of cards like Blade Flurry. But now Rogues can actually get some good cards because Blade Flurry is not as powerful as it is. So overall, really solid change. Knife Juggler. Still an interesting card, and it's still going to see a ton of play. The thing is, Knife Juggler rarely was ever actually played on 2, which means the fact that it can't trade as well on 2 is not as relevant as its effect. And we would like to see them nerf the effect itself from when a summon minion is played to when a minion is played. The difference between that is that only when minions are played out of your hand, and that would make it so it's a 2-mana 3/2 plus something. 2-mana 3/2 is already baseline, and then with that plus something, the card probably would have still seen a little bit of play, but it wouldn't just been a straight up auto include in some decks like it's going to be right now. Leopard Gnome. All they're doing with this card is reducing its attack by 1. This just allows for cards like Morgan Infiltrator and Argent Squire to see more play. Leopard Gnome will still see play as a niche card for decks that really want just 2 damage. This is still an efficient card damage-wise. It's just not as efficient tempo-wise. So it's a good change because we just get to see more variety. Arcane Golem. Changing it from a 3 mana 4/2 charge battle cry, give your opponent a mana crystal, to a 3 mana 4/2 battle cry, give your opponent, a 3 mana 4/4, give your opponent a mana crystal. So no charge, and they buffed its HP by 2. So as you're seeing a theme here by the Force of Nature change, and this change, they have an issue with charge mechanics, and history have been very powerful in Hearthstone due to the fact that you have no way to interact with your opponent's turn. 3 mana 4/4 is already in the game. It's called Ogre Brute. Never seen play. Its downside to 3 mana 4/4, which is above baseline, is not as bad as this. It's giving your opponent Wild Growth. Like, how powerful is Wild Growth in Hearthstone? I definitely think this should at least been a 3 mana 4/5 or a 3 mana 5/5, and that way it would have seen play. It would have been worth it. And then it would have made the game more interesting because we get more powerful cards and more variety of cards. Molten Giant. It is being increased by 5 mana, which means in order to get it for free, you have to be at 5 HP. This change needed to happen with them nerfing burst mechanics and them nerfing Big Game Hunter. Game Hunter was designed in order to actually deal with giants. Having this card being in the game at 20 mana and being available for free at 10 mana, the way people play around Molten Giants is they just not attack, and then they would just burst them. So that way they would have to play the Molten Giants for like 5 or 4 mana instead of for free, and force to taunt them. Instead of just playing it for free, and like Molten Giant, Shadow Flame, and stuff like that. None of those combos are really as potent anymore, which is good for the health of the game. But the card may still see play since now the burst is gone. Dealing 5 damage is going to be quite a bit harder. A lot of mechanics, like kill command, just will kill you at 5. A lot of cards will just still kill you at 5 health. So we're still going to see play. Just, it rarely is ever going to be played for free. Master of Disguise. This is the final change, and this is a change that needed to happen for the design space. It makes it so certain cards can't get printed. So it just says, we want to print cards that if they were to be able to be stealth permanently, would be broken. And that's good, because that means more variety in the cards they print, which means more variety in gameplay, which means the health of Hearthstone is just better. Overall, the changes were good for the game, but there are 2 caveats to this. Well, 3 things I wish were nerfed. One, I think Doomhammer should definitely been nerfed. That is 6 mana, one of it being Overload. For 16 damage, that is in one card. It is ridiculous. And leaving Aggro Shaman virtually unchanged without Crackle being removed. Second, I would have liked to see Savage Roar nerfed over Force of Nature. It is just a better Bloodlust. It's easily still the best burst card in the single burst card in the entire game by itself. Because of Savage Roar not getting nerfed, we're going to see Druid go away from the ramp, which is what we want to see, and more towards Token, a much more aggressive Druid that like ends its curve around 5 to 6 mana. People have been dying for control meta right now, and it doesn't seem we're going to be getting that. Third, Freeze Mage not getting nerfed. The Freeze Mage, most of its cards are just from the classic set, and none of them got nerfed. I'm saying make it less powerful than it is. It's not a fun deck to play against. It's the most uninteractive deck in the history of Hearthstone. With them taking out cards like Healbot, and with them slowing down the meta, Freeze Mage is going to be so much better. But anyways, that should wrap up my review on the changes for the Classic set and coming up with Standard. Up next are going to be a review for each of the classes, and then a review for the neutrals. So look forward to that, guys, and I will see you in the next video.